In 1857, the first oil well was drilled. After in 1865, Walter Darwin founded the Pierre Oil Company to drill for oil in South Trinidad. Then in 1866, he had his first successful well drilling, and that is how the whole concept of drilling for oil in Trinidad came about. Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited, Petrotrin, was incorporated in 1993 to merge the interests of the Trinidad and Tobago Oil Company Limited (Trintoc) and the Trinidad and Tobago Petroleum Company Limited (Trintopec). Petrotrin can be traced back to the beginning of commercial oil production in Trinidad and Tobago through their predecessors, an integration of international energy companies that had key roles in the development of the nation's energy sector. Although state-owned Trintoc and Trintopec were formed in 1974 and 1985 respectively, some of Petrotrin's earlier predecessors include Trinidad Liso Limited, BP, Shell, Texaco, and others. Petrotrin's investment in the nation's energy sector covers a varying range of operation stemming from exploration and production to refining and marketing. When the company was formed, all of the country's findings on the land were absorbed in Petrotrin's interests, so that its acreage covers most of the southwestern peninsula of the island of Trinidad.
Major local discoveries on land include the discovery of oil fields at Guayaguari, 1903, Guapo, 1907, Forest Reserve, 1914, Barapo, 1911, Faizabad, 1919, Palo Seco, 1926, and Pinal, 1936. The major Soledado field offshore Point Fortin was discovered in 1955. Petrotrin has a public education booklet called The Pride of Point Fortin that documents the early days of prospecting in Trinidad and Tobago leading up to the discovery of oil in commercial quantities in Guapo Point Fortin. Petrotrin is closing because it is currently in debt of 12 billion TT dollars. The company owes TT 3 billion in taxes and royalties to the government and is projected to lose TT 2 billion annually. The company does not produce enough oil to run refinery operations. This is due to roughly 2/3 of that oil is imported. If the government decides it is closing the refinery, what is the impact of the economy? He asked. We all agree that Petrotrin has to be driven to efficiency, has to be profitable, and cannot be a burden to Trinidad and Tobago, and no government guarantee to refinance the debt. But there is another side that we have to look at now. What is the impact of closing the refinery? He asked.
Ramnarayan said that in addition to several communities surrounding the refinery feeling the economic fallout, there would be an environmental issue with decommissioning the facility. All these communities, in almost fence-line proximity of the refinery, have some direct relationship to the refinery. Then, there are hundreds of contractors, hundreds of service companies that all depend on what's happening in the refinery for their work, he said. Negative effects of Petrotrin closing. Petrotrin is the largest crude oil producer in the country. Due to the closing of the company, persons will be out of jobs. This number is estimated to be around 4,300 individuals, which is inclusive of both permanent and temporary workers. There is much to consider where this action is concerned. Retrenchment can have a traumatic and emotional impact on persons who have been laid off. The impact of being retrenched can be devastating. Retrenchment doesn't only affect one's financial security, but also their personal sense of worth, because some employees drive a self-worth form for their vocation. Retrenchment breeds uncertainty because it's sometimes difficult to gauge for how long he will be unemployed. If not managed correctly, retrenchment could result in depression.
Other common effects of this are loss of the ability to finance bills such as rent, mortgages, groceries, and even school fees. The termination of these employees will not only affect them directly, but also their dependents, such as their wives, husbands, and even their children. Others who will be affected are the business owners that rely on Petrotrin on a daily basis, such as restaurants, hardware stores, and other small businesses. Vehicle owners will also be affected due to the increase in gas prices, passengers due to the increase in taxi fares, and regional countries such as Jamaica, Barbados, Grenada, and St. Lucia, to name a few, who depend on Petrotrin to supply them with gasoline, diesel, and aviation fuel to power their own economies. If you want to relate Petrotrin to Caribbean civilization, you can start by saying that Petrotrin is responsible for a significant part in our civilization, advancing as a country and by extension the Caribbean. In our industrialized era, moving us from our agricultural era to the industrial one. Even outside of the industrial territory, Petrotrin played an important part when it came to the culture of the country. Petrotrin sponsored numerous steel pan bands. They sponsored carnival events, which is one of our major cultural festivals in Trinidad and Tobago, and even sponsored other events throughout the country, such as football, etc. According to Paddock, in 2000, culture is defined as a body of beliefs and practices by which a group of people understand themselves and the world and organize their individual and collective lives. He can even go on to say that Petrotrin is a very diversified company. This can be due to the enslavement era and indentureship era, where the Africans and Indians were brought to Trinidad and the Caribbean by extension to work on plantations. You can more than see the diversity in the company when watching the videos and news clippings of the workers protesting.